All right, hello. I finally had some energy to film a YouTube video, so this is what you're getting. I just moved. There's a bunch of random shenanigans back there. I don't have my microphone. I'm having to use my phone. I can't find any of my camera batteries, but here we are. So I'm a little late to the game, but today I wanted to talk about the Beta Bionics iLet insulin pump. I've now had the opportunity to work with several clients that have used the system, so I wanted to share how exciting it is. The Beta Bionics insulin pump, or artificial pancreas as they are coining it, is an insulin pump created by a company called Beta Bionics. This is their first insulin pump on the market. It is an automated insulin delivery system, so it uses an algorithm alongside the Dexcom G6 and the Dexcom G7 to make insulin adjustment decisions. The algorithm itself is extremely unique and unlike anything else that I have seen or that is on the market currently. Similar to the other automated insulin pumps on the market like Omnipod and Tandem and Medtronic, the Beta Bionics pump reads the continuous glucose monitor data every 5 minutes and makes dosing decisions every 5 minutes. The craziest part about this insulin pump that is so different from the other pumps is that the dosing calculations are based off of just one data point that is entered into the pump when you start using it: your body weight in kilograms, to be exact. The Basal algorithm doesn't use any user inputted basal settings. It autonomously sets and uses a dynamic basal rate. The basal rate is limited to 0.05 units per hour per kilogram of body mass. If the apparent need for insulin increases, then the insulin dosing aggressiveness will gradually increase as well. The correction algorithm calculates the correction dose needed based off of the glucose profile from the previous 24 hours, your current CGM glucose and trend, as well as insulin on board. Announcing meals are still required using this pump, but the insulin to carb ratio, once again, is not user inputted. It is determined by the pump. What's even crazier about this insulin pump is that instead of entering the numerical amount of carbohydrates that you are eating, let's say I want to eat something and I'm gonna put 45 grams into my insulin pump, it calculates based off of the insulin to carb ratio that I give it. The iLet instead uses actually one of my favorite methods of dosing, which is a usual less more method of dosing. Meal doses are adapted over time separately for each meal type: breakfast, lunch, and dinner, based on the 4-hour postprandial insulin bolus dosing, the sum of meal bolus and correction during this period that was needed after prior announcements of each meal type. The meal dose algorithm aims to provide 75% of the insulin needed for an announced meal. So when you go in, you're going to tell it I'm eating breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and you're going to say I'm eating the usual amount of carbohydrates, less than what I would normally eat, or more than I would normally eat. The insulin dose for a less than meal is 50% that it would normally give you for a usual meal, and the more meal is 150% of the amount that it would normally give you. Any additional dosing that is needed after it gives you your mealtime bolus is delivered in correction doses using the correction algorithm. Only settings that you can, as the user of the insulin pump, manipulate in the Beta Bionics pump is the body weight in kilograms as well as a glucose target. So once again, there is a usual glucose target. This is going to be set at 120 milligrams per deciliter. And then there is also a lower glucose target, and this is at 110 milligrams per deciliter. And then there is a higher glucose target, which could be used for something like activity or times when you just are more sensitive to insulin and you want the pump to correct you down to a higher target. This is 130 milligrams per deciliter. These are the targets towards which the algorithms aim to steer the glucose, but the average glucose level that is achieved will almost always be higher than the glucose target. If you are somebody that eats like a very low carbohydrate diet, or you are honeymooning or have just very low insulin needs, you may end up being closer to the target that it's giving you. Because remember, especially for meals, it's giving you 75% of the dose it estimates that you should need for what you're announcing. Let's look a little closer at meal bolusing. I tell my clients to not overcomplicate things because it can feel easy to do in this case, because it's probably not how you're used to bolusing. During the first week of use on this insulin pump system, do not go overboard. Do not exercise more than you normally would. Do not eat more than you normally would. Now is not the time to try out the new buffet that has opened up in your area. Try to keep things at the status quo so that the pump can learn what your usual carbohydrate intake is and what the appropriate dosing is for you. So the usual amount of carbs that you would typically eat, obviously, is going to be your usual. There is no right or wrong to this. Maybe more than your doctor tells you to. Who cares? Whatever, it's fine. This is the usual amount that you usually eat. If you are eating 50% more than you normally would, 1.5 times as many carbohydrates as your usual, this would be the time you would pick more when you are announcing your meal in the Beta Bionics pump. If you're eating about half as much carbohydrates as your usual meal, then you would pick less. So 50% more, 50% less. Pretty self-explanatory. If the meal or the snack you're eating is less than a quarter or 25% of the carbs of your usual meal, then you don't need to announce. Your insulin pump will use correctional doses if there is a rise in your blood sugar. So most of my clients that have used this pump get a little bit hung up on like what is usual, what is more, what is less. And again, I wouldn't overcomplicate it. The pump is very good at not giving you way too much or way too little. It's smart. And honestly, like if you've had diabetes for a long time, you may notice that you bolus this way just in general. Like when I go to enter carbohydrates into my pump, my usual is 45 grams. And then if I'm eating more, it's usually maybe 65 or 75. I'm never sitting there weighing the exact amount. I will occasionally put in like a very exact carbohydrate measurement based off of the nutrition label, but majority of the time I'm just doing 45, 75, or 25 based off of my usual. Excuse me. Oh God. I want to hear your thoughts on this form of meal bolusing and dosing. Are you excited about it? Is it something that you kind of already do? Is it something you might try out? Let me know. Take it to the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. Advantages are obviously there's no more carb counting, no adjusting and calculating. You're not having to worry about whether you need to adjust your basal rate or your ICR or ISF because the pump is doing it for you. It's just like a lot less guesswork. It's also approved for use with FIASP, especially with that type of meal bolusing where maybe it's a little less precise and maybe not the entire dose up front. FIASP is going to be very helpful in that situation. They also have pre-filled cartridges. If you are somebody that has some dexterity issues, like with filling the cartridges and getting them in there and priming the tubing, they do have pre-filled cartridges that your doctor can prescribe and you can pick up and have a great time. And it's just a really great device for people that are not super obsessed with staying 100% time in range, which if you've been watching me for a while is completely unnecessary. It keeps you in a very safe and functional place, and I think that the whole getting rid of the mental burden of carb counting and inputting and calculating and basal testing and ICR testing and all of these things that we have to do, maybe the higher percent time in range is kind of a great trade-off. Okay. Disadvantages for this insulin pump. I am a little, I understand a little bit of why they did this. Vaguely, but I don't love it. So there's no manual mode. So if your continuous glucose monitor runs out and you don't put a new one on, it doesn't kick into like preset basal rates, ICR, ISF, and turn into just a non-automated pump. So you really have to keep up with your CGM supply orders and know how to switch to MDI in a pinch. What usually happens is if you've been using the pump for more than 7 days, it goes into BG run mode, and this lasts 72 hours. So it requires a finger poke every 4 hours to keep the pump doing what it needs to do. Obviously, it's going to be way less precise and all that good stuff, but I think it's just going based off of the ICR, ISF, and basal rates that it's been giving you for the past couple of days. Another disadvantage is I've found that grazers or people that really eat a lot of small meals, if that's your preference, they really don't benefit from this type of system. You kind of have to be somebody that has a bit more like structure to their meals. Doesn't mean that you can't like skip meals or anything like that, but I did find that people were a little perplexed if they were having a little bit more carb heavy of a snack. Again, I think it's possible to do it. You just have to be willing to trial and error. So certain snacks you're not going to have to bolus for, and you're going to have to rely more on the corrections. Other snacks may be more of like a less meal, depending on what you notice the pump does. Obviously, pregnant people or people who require really tight ranges, they are not going to benefit from this system because we are keeping them at a place that is very, very tight and not recommended for other people. So that's mostly pregnant people, possibly other people who are like about to get a kidney transplant or something like that. Situations where we really, really want their A1Cs to be very low and their time in ranges to be a lot higher than the average person. Some miscellaneous other stuff we should talk about. There is a rechargeable battery. So it's a very specific iLet device. They give you one when you get the pump. I would call them and ask for a second one because they'll give you 2 of them if you ask. And it's like the kind where you like the iPhone MagSafe version. What is this called? I don't even know. MagSafe. Oh, maybe we'll call it wireless charging. So you put the back of the pump onto a pad and it charges that way. It is unclear as to whether these will work with third-party versions. Obviously, Beta Bionics is going to tell you to not use a third-party charger, but I would probably try something else. Anywho, I believe it takes like fairly little time to charge, so it's something that you could do. You could have a charger at your office or at breakfast and just pop it on there while you're eating or while you're working, and you should have adequate charge. The Beta Bionics iLet can also be used with the Dexcom G6 and the Dexcom G7. I have not heard too much about whether or not they will be adding Libre integration, but based off of what I've been seeing, I have a feeling it's going to happen at some point, probably very soon. Infusion sets are the same as the other tubed pumps, so if you're used to the steel cannulas, those are available. If you're used to any of the plastic cannulas, the 90 degree, the 30 degree, whichever ones you're using, they are the same, they just have different names. There is a mobile app for Android and iOS. It does not allow you to bolus as does the Tandem Control-IQ app. It's really just for viewing data. All right, so you've made it to the end of the video. If you're somebody that is using MDI and thinking of switching to a pump, maybe that's why you have found this video, is you're curious about that pump, or you're just doing a bit of early research, then I want you to go look at this video that I have made about switching from MDI and whether or not an insulin pump is right for you and your diabetes management. My name is Rachel. I am a diabetes care and education specialist, as well as somebody that has lived with type 1 diabetes for 26 years, and subscribe to my YouTube channel because we talk about new technology and all kinds of diabetes goodies on this channel, as well as my other socials. So go find me there, go watch the other video. I love you. I'll see you in the next one.